Hello. It's good to see you. Today we are going to be making two dishes that go so well together. When I was a kid, these were two things that my mom would make from time to time. One in particular she made very often. It's so simple, but it's so good. And it just takes basic ingredients that you probably already have. So that's one thing. We're going to be doing also candied sweet potatoes. And it's not candied yams. And I cannot say that word Y-A-M in one syllable. It's yam. It's yam. It's sweet potatoes. Yams and sweet potatoes are two different things. But the thing that I mentioned that we had a lot, it's a green bean thing. And it's not a green bean casserole. So my mother never made that. But she would do this thing with green beans that was so simple but so wonderful. And I thought, well, if we're doing candied sweet potatoes, let's do the green beans at the same time, because we would frequently have both. And these are two things that would go really well with a lot of different things. The candied sweet potatoes are kind of like a dessert type of thing. They're quite sweet. They're candied, so they're going to be sweet. And the green beans, a lot of times whenever we had this, she might make some pork chops, or if she had some ham or something like that. Really, you can pair them with just about anything, macaroni and cheese, any kind of bread, really. Just whatever you might have, or whatever you think sounds good, you can have with these dishes. The candied sweet potatoes my mother would always make for family reunions because people loved them so much. Her candied sweet potatoes were always one of the first things to go on the table with all the food. People would love her candied sweet potatoes. Now, she doesn't actually have a recipe for it. Like I've mentioned before, she kind of cooks by feel. She doesn't really measure things. She just adds it until she knows it's enough. She's just one of these people that just does it that way. But I went online and I looked around and I found this recipe. It's on a website called My Forking Life. And it's perfect. I read over it and it sounds almost identical to what my mother does. So we're going to use this recipe that I found here for southern candied sweet potatoes. I will put a link in the description to this recipe. It's very simple. So we're gonna make this. Now, these candied sweet potatoes don't have marshmallows. I know some people, when they do any kind of sweet potato dish, they'll put marshmallows on top. I'm not totally against it, but for this, and the author of this recipe said the same thing, and I agree with her. This recipe is already quite sweet, and I don't think the marshmallows are necessary because I think it's sweet enough on its own. So we're gonna do that. And we're going to start out, though, with the green beans, because the green beans are going to have to kind of sit and stew for a while. And one thing I learned from my mother never really taught me to cook anything. Everything I learned from her, I learned by just watching on my own. One thing I did pick up on, though, was I noticed she would start some things first. Like, okay, she would start this. She would get this on the burner and get it to simmering, and then she would start something else. So that, she'd been doing it for so many years. I guess she got to where she could figure out how to have everything ready at the same time. Well, you got to start this earlier. You want to wait until near the end to do this. And it's all about timing. So if you're going to make these two dishes together, I would recommend starting with the green beans. And that recipe is very simple, and I will give you, there's really nothing to it. I could write down the steps, but it's pretty simple. But for the green beans, I'm going to use this. These are the only green beans I like. Del Monte green beans. Now, these are the cut green beans like this. You can also use fresh green beans, but you're going to have to stew them longer, and they won't taste exactly the same. When I was growing up, we always had a garden, and often she would make a huge pot of these with green beans from the garden, and she'd let it basically just simmer all day. But with this, we're not going to do it that long. I'm going to use 2 cans of Del Monte fresh cut green beans. These cans are 14.5 ounces each. I've tried other store brands, and they're just not as good. I always come back to Del Monte. I think it's worth spending a little extra on these because they just taste so good. You can also get value packs of these. I picked up this four can value pack of Del Monte cut green beans at Walmart. I believe it was $3.98 for 4 cans. So, and it's a lot easier to carry than 4 individual cans. Alright, so for the green beans, you're going to need 2 cans of these, whatever kind you want, it doesn't matter. If you don't want to use Del Monte, you don't have to. We're going to use a bouillon cube. Now this is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. I picked up some Weiler's beef bouillon cubes. And I'm going to just drop either 1 or a half of one of these bouillon cubes in. We're going to take our 2 cans of green beans, put them in a pot, put them in there. You can add extra water if you want to. You definitely want to make sure you have enough water to cover the beans. Add your beef bouillon cube to it. And, of course, you're going to have to stir it around as it warms up to kind of dissolve that bouillon cube in there a little bit. And then you're going to take just a little bit of oil, any kind of oil, vegetable oil, olive oil, it doesn't matter, any kind. And it's probably about a teaspoon or so. You're just going to just bloop like a teaspoon of oil in there, or a couple. I don't know the exact amount. And a pinch of sugar, and I don't have any sugar sitting out here. Just a little pinch, literally. I mean, it's like maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon, just a pinch, and you just kind of, do it over like that. Stir it in, and you slowly bring it to a boil. You let it boil for a little bit, and then you turn the heat down to where it's just simmering. And again, you want to make sure you have enough water in there to cover the beans. And you let it simmer like that, I'd say for at least 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. Stir it every now and then, a little bit. You don't have to cover the pot. You don't put a lid on it or anything. You just have them in your pot or whatever you're cooking them in. Let them just simmer for 20 to 30 minutes. And they'll get very tender. They'll look a little bit shriveled. They'll probably be a darker color. They'll be a darker green as they simmer. I'm telling you, they're so good. It completely changes the way they taste. They're sweeter. They're more tender. They're fabulous. So we're gonna start that first, and then we're going to get into the Southern Candied sweet potatoes. Do you know sweet potato is the state vegetable for North Carolina? We grow so many sweet potatoes here. Oh my word. Okay, for the Southern Candied sweet potatoes, very, very quick prep time. They do have to cook for about an hour though. Okay, you're going to need a 13x9 baking dish. I grabbed my Pyrex dish here, 13x9. You're going to need one of those. You're going to need foil. You're going to need aluminum foil. I have here my Boulder heavy duty aluminum foil from Aldi. You're going to need the foil. And for the ingredients, you're going to need 2 pounds of sweet potatoes, peeled and sliced about a 1/2 inch thick. And I picked these up at Aldi. Look at that. Ooh. I think these are North Carolina sweet potatoes. But it doesn't say. It just says product of USA. But yeah. So we're going to need about 2 pounds of sweet potatoes. You want to peel them, peel them and slice them about a 1/2 inch thick. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup of butter, which is a whole stick of butter, 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar. And I had this left over from another recipe. I'm pretty sure I can get 3/4 cup out of there. I should be able to. 3/4 cup of that. You're also going to need a 1/2 cup of just regular white sugar. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I picked up a fresh thing of stone meal ground cinnamon from Aldi. A 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. And also, now this is a little different from my mom's. This one also calls for 2 tablespoons of orange juice. That's kind of interesting. I never saw her put orange juice in hers. Now, the stuff she made, she would use the brown sugar, regular sugar, and the cinnamon and the nutmeg. But I'm going to add the orange juice to it too. That's kind of interesting. So we're going to get into the sweet potatoes after we get the green beans started. So let's go ahead and get started on that. This is going to be so simple, you just won't believe it. Okay, so I have my cans of green beans here. Again, I'm using Del Monte fresh cut green beans with sea salt. And it still has the water in there. I haven't poured that out. I'm going to just put it in here. So there's one. And 2. You can do as many as you want. So there's 2. And you see how they kind of pile up like that? You just kind of pat them down. And if you want to add some extra water to it, you certainly can. I probably will as they cook. So we did that. So I just happen to have a container of olive oil here. Again, you can use any kind. I saw my mother use basically every kind. Just put a little bit of oil in there like that. And I'm just going to take a pinch of this sugar right here. Like that. And then you have your beef bouillon cube. Look at them, they look like little presents. I always thought they looked like little tiny gifts. You have to unwrap the gift. Don't put the paper in there. It doesn't add to the flavor. So cute. Now, you don't have to use the whole one. I think I might actually just cut this in half. I think that might be a little bit too much. Okay, I have basically a half of a bouillon cube. Just put that down in there. Now, I'm going to start it out on medium. I'll do medium, between medium and high. And I'm going to bring that to a boil. And then after it boils, I'm going to turn it back down to low, and then I'm just going to let it simmer. And you just kind of stir at it occasionally, a little bit. Keep an eye on it. And if it needs more water, do you want to just keep it covered in water? For most of it anyway. Near the end, if it cooks down to where there's not enough water covering it, it's really not a big deal. But now, while this does its thing, we're going to go ahead and get started on the candied sweet potatoes. For the next step in this process, we're going to take our 13 by 9 little casserole dish here, just my little Pyrex dish, and I have cut up some sweet potatoes that, peeled and cut, approximately a 1/2 inch thick. It really doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you're just going to layer your pieces in this pan. Now, by nature of the shape of sweet potatoes, the pieces are going to be different sizes, which is actually perfect for this process, because that way you can fill up little gaps a little bit with them. You can just kind of wedge them in there. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to matter. And if I don't have enough, I have some more. I think I've cut up enough. It said you should cut up 2 pounds. I think I have about that much. If not, I'll just cut some more. Yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to have some left over, as a matter of fact. That's okay. I'll show you what my mom would do if she had leftover pieces. A little hole in there. And you can kind of, wiggle them around and fit in more. You just want to make sure you have one solid layer and they're not overlapping like that. You want to just have a single layer in there. It's fine. It's okay. I'm gonna leave some space. It's all right. I have a little bit left over, so what I'll probably do is just grab another pan or something, and I'm just gonna put them in there, and I can just make those separately. They're not gonna go to waste. My mother would always take them and put them in a separate little dish and cover them up and use the coating. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna take some salt, just a little bit. You want to lightly sprinkle just a little bit of salt over the tops of those cut up sweet potatoes. And we're just going to leave this for now, and we're going to make the lovely sweet mixture that's going to go over top of these sweet potatoes. The next step in this process involves combining the butter and the sugar and the cinnamon and the nutmeg and the orange juice. And the way we're going to do that is right here. So it says you need a heavy-duty saucepan. I always turn on the wrong burner. Nope, I got it. It says you need a heavy-duty saucepan. I don't know if this is heavy-duty, but I guess we'll find out. So you're going to take a whole stick of butter, and we're going to melt it in here. It's already a little squishy. I set it out a while ago. It's a stick of great value butter. Only the best. So we've already started melting this butter, and I just have it on kind of medium heat. And I'm just kind of moving it around. The green beans are lovely. I have them right over here. Look at them. Aren't they pretty? They smell great. And so we're going to start melting this butter. My beans are bubbling over here. Everything's going great. You want to fully melt that stick of butter before you add anything to it, according to the instructions. Can I cut it? I can. It's definitely melting. Look at it. It smells good. I'm just breaking up the little pieces. Okay, that's got it melted there. Now we have to add our sugars to it. It doesn't say what order, you just add it. You just want to add it all. That's regular sugar. I'll just turn the heat down a little bit. Our nutmeg. And I just keep stirring. You're wanting to dissolve that sugar as well. Cinnamon. There. Oh, that smells good. I can really smell that cinnamon. We have more, but right now I'm just trying to work this in before I add anything else. Okay. Next, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar from my Tupperware measuring cup little set that I got at an antique store. It's actually a 3/4 cup measuring cup, which is very hard to find. That's packed brown sugar. There's a little bit of stuff left in there. Get out. Now we're going to mix this in until it dissolves. I remember watching my mother do this when she was getting ready to make her candied sweet potatoes. That brown sugar definitely changed that consistency. It's quite thick. We're just melting that sugar. It definitely smells a little different. You can tell sometimes by smell how things change as they cook. We're now going to remove it from the heat. It smells really good. You remove it from the heat, and then you add your 2 tablespoons of orange juice. It's off the burner. The burner is turned off. It's over there. Okay. Now we have this all ready. And we're going to go pour it over our sweet potatoes. Okay. We have our candied stuff here. My mother would actually spoon it out with a big spoon. Maybe I should do it that way. She didn't just pour it from the pot. She would actually use a big spoon. All right, I got a big spoon. So I just keep stirring it a little bit. And you want to make sure you cover the sweet potatoes with that syrup, with your mix. These are my extras over here. And I know it says in the recipe you want to make sure you don't leave any pieces uncovered. But honestly, I think it leaves it kind of tough and it's actually kind of good. What I did was I just kind of dipped in here a little bit. And I did go ahead and make sure to cover the pieces. You want to make sure you have a bit. It doesn't have to be a thick layer over the top. But you want to make sure you have at least a little bit on the tops of each. But I'm just saying, when I was a kid, if there was a piece that kind of got missed, I don't know, the texture of those pieces is a little different, and I just kind of liked it. So if a piece doesn't get completely covered, I'm not going to be sad because that will probably be the one I eat first. Okay. What we're going to do now, or what I'm going to do, you want to cover the dish tightly with foil. And I'm just going to cover each of these tightly with foil. And then you want to bake them in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to do that. I was just looking at the recipe. We're going to bake them with tightly covered foil over the tops at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. And then we will take the foil off and we'll bake it for an additional 30 minutes after we stir them. So we're going to bake them for 30, then stir them, bake them for another 30. Okay, we have them out of the oven. They were baked with the foil on them tightly for 30 minutes at 350 degrees. Now it says, the instructions say, you have to stir the potatoes. I'm just kind of flipping them over, moving them around a little. They smell wonderful. They smell really good. So you just want to kind of move them around a little bit. You don't have to flip them all over. It's really not that big of a deal. Now when they go back in the oven, they're going to go in there for another 30 minutes uncovered. Still 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And the green beans are still simmering on the stove, getting more and more juicy and tender. I added a little bit more water to them. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you don't flip them all. I think the most important part is to just kind of move them around and make sure they're all covered with the syrup. Now that syrup, you see how it looks kind of watery right now? It's kind of thin. That will definitely thicken up after we bake it for another 30 minutes, and then you take it out of the oven and let it sit for 10 minutes or so. It will thicken up quite a bit. It won't be that runny looking. Okay. Now I'm going to pop these back in the oven for 30 minutes. And then we'll come back and see what they look like. You're supposed to bake them for 30 minutes or until they are fork tender. We have now baked them uncovered for an additional 30 minutes. You may notice this one looks a little different. I have to admit, for the first time ever, I tried some before I tried it with you because it smelled so good I could not help it. So I started not to even show this, and then I thought, no, they're going to wonder what happened to this one. You see, and I also have to prove it. I didn't eat all of them. Like, I ate some. It's really good. It smelled so good when it came out of the oven. I haven't touched this one. It smelled so good when it came out that I ate some. I was hungry, and it smelled good. So it's super yummy. But I don't know if you can see, but, well, not really. The sauce has kind of started to form a little skin on it. This is not the spoon I ate with, this is a clean one. As it cools, it will become even thicker and it will start to solidify, because, it's candied. And the pieces are so incredibly tender. I could just cut them like with a spoon. Like you can just cut right through it. Just like that. Yeah, so it's super tender and it's so good. Oh my goodness, they're so sweet. And that cinnamon and the nutmeg and the butter, it's just fabulous. It's really good. Obviously not a super fantastic health food. Definitely not something I eat very often, but it's unbelievably yummy. So now I have been... my green beans have been simmering now for quite a while. We're going to go ahead and have some of the green beans and some more of the candied sweet potatoes. Okay, we have our food here. Look at the little candied sweet potatoes and our green beans. They smell so good. They probably don't look all that different, really, but simmering them for a long time in that oil and the bouillon cube and a little bit of sugar, oh my goodness, it makes them very tender, and it kind of, that just little pinch of sugar just brings out a lot of sweetness in these green beans. And I don't know, it just totally changes the way they taste. It's very good. Yeah, it reminds me of the ones my mom used to make. They're so incredibly good, and it's so easy. You just have to remember to start it a little bit ahead of time. You could probably even do it like in a crock pot or something like that. I've never tried that. I should try that. Like just put everything in a crock pot, and I don't know, maybe leave it on low for like 6 hours or something. I might try that this weekend. I feel like getting the crock pot out and trying some stuff. And then we have our lovely little sweet potatoes here. Very tender. This one's small. Look at that. And it's totally coated in that syrup that we made with the butter and the sugar and the cinnamon and the nutmeg and the 2 tablespoons of orange juice. Honestly, I never saw my mom put orange juice in here. I can't really tell a difference in the taste at all. Oh my God, it's so good. It's very tender, very sweet. Oh, it's wonderful. It's so good. If you like sweet potato pie, I'm pretty sure you'll like this. Or if you like pumpkin stuff, you probably like this. I like sweet potatoes more than pumpkin stuff, personally. But it just cuts, like you can just cut right through it, see? Look at that. Let's see, no marshmallows. You don't need them. You really don't need them. I think marshmallows will be overkill with this. You don't need that extra layer of sweetness. You don't need it at all. They're so incredibly good. It's still a little bit warm. So I don't want to eat a whole lot of this at this point. I'm going to actually wrap this up and take it down the street to Miss Margaret's house for a very late lunch. She has one of those honey baked hams. If you've ever had one of those, they're really good. And I said, I have the perfect thing to go with that honey baked ham. I'm going to make candied sweet potatoes and some good like stewed green beans. And she's going to make some of those little rolls, you know, the heat and serve rolls. It's like the little, it looks like a roll, but it's just dough, you know, and then you pop it in the oven and you brown it. She's going to make some of those. So we're going to have honey baked ham, which I have not had in forever. Honey baked ham, candied sweet potatoes, green beans, and rolls, and sweet tea, I hope. That's what I'm hoping we're having. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed seeing these things come to be. I certainly did. And I'm going to go enjoy a little bit more with some ham here shortly. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you again soon.